April 16, 1962. Washington, D.C. Zara Mitchell tucked a loose strand of chestnut hair behind her ear as she finished typing the latest intelligence brief. Through the window of her small office at CIA headquarters in Langley, she could see cherry blossoms blooming in the distance. Spring had arrived in Washington, bringing with it a deceptive sense of renewal that masked the deepening tensions of the Cold War. At 28, Zara had worked as an executive secretary in the Soviet Eastern Europe Division for nearly 4 years. She was efficient, detail-oriented, and trusted, qualities that had earned her access to sensitive materials passing through her boss's office. She knew more about Soviet operations than most junior officers in the building. Another late night, Miss Mitchell? Director of Operations Owen Zander stood in her doorway, his tie loosened after a long day of meetings. Just finishing up the Prague station reports, sir. They'll be on your desk first thing tomorrow. Always reliable. He nodded appreciatively. Say, how's your mother doing? Still in Baltimore. Zara's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. She's well, thank you. The treatments are expensive, but they seem to be working. Glad to hear it. Director Zander lingered momentarily. Don't stay too late. The world's problems will still be here tomorrow. After he left, Zara pulled open her desk drawer and stared at the envelope containing her mother's latest hospital bill. The numbers seemed to grow larger every month. A secretary's salary at the CIA was decent, but not enough to cover specialized cancer treatments. She'd already taken a second mortgage on her small Arlington apartment. Zara believed in her country. She believed in the work she did, even if it was just typing reports and managing schedules. But lately, the weight of her mother's illness pressed on her like a physical burden. She never imagined that her dedication and discretion would make her valuable to people other than her CIA superiors. May 2, 1962, the man who introduced himself as Thomas Reed looked entirely forgettable, medium height, medium build, graying at the temples with wire-rimmed glasses. He sat across from Zara at Martin's Tavern in Georgetown, nursing a scotch and soda. I appreciate you meeting me, Miss Mitchell. Your reputation in the academic community is impressive. Zara smiled politely. The cover story about consulting on his doctoral research about administrative systems in government agencies seemed plausible enough to accept his invitation for drinks. Though I must admit, Reed continued, lowering his voice, my interest is more specific than I initially indicated. Something in his tone shifted. Zara felt a chill despite the warmth of the tavern. I represent people who admire your skills and discretion. People who understand the financial pressures you're under. Zara set down her martini. I'm not sure what you mean. Your mother's treatment at Johns Hopkins. Expensive business, cancer. He said it casually, as if commenting on the weather. Experimental therapies often aren't covered by insurance. Zara's pulse quickened. How could he know about that? She'd been careful never to discuss her mother's condition at work. I think there's been a misunderstanding, she said evenly, reaching for her purse. Reed placed a small envelope on the table and slid it toward her. Consider this a gesture of goodwill. No strings attached. Just something to help with the medical bills. Zara didn't touch the envelope. Who do you represent, Mr. Reed? People who believe in balance between great powers. People who would value occasional insights about American thinking regarding certain matters of mutual concern. The realization hit her with perfect clarity. This wasn't about academic research. This was a recruitment attempt. I should go, she said, standing. Reed remained seated, his expression unchanged. Think about it, Miss Mitchell. We're not asking for state secrets, just context, atmosphere. And the compensation would solve your mother's financial concerns completely. He slid a business card across the table. Call this number when you're ready to discuss further. Zara left the card on the table but found the envelope somehow in her purse when she arrived home. Inside was $2,000 in crisp $100 bills. Exactly what she needed for her mother's next treatment. May 23, 1962, you're distracted today, observed Diane from the desk opposite Zara's. Everything all right? Zara forced a smile. Just tired. Was up late going through those files for the Budapest review. In truth, she'd been up all night wrestling with an impossible decision. Reed had contacted her again, this time by telephone at her home, a fact that terrified her. He knew where she lived. The sum offered for her consulting had increased to $10,000, with promises of more. She hadn't spent the money from the envelope. It sat hidden in her apartment, a constant reminder of temptation and danger. Her mother's doctor had called yesterday, recommending a new treatment protocol that might extend her life significantly, at substantial additional cost. The secure telephone on her desk rang. Soviet Eastern Europe Division, Miss Mitchell speaking. Miss Mitchell, we need the Yugoslavia assessment immediately for the director's meeting. Of course, sir. I'll bring it right over. Zara retrieved the classified file from the locked cabinet behind her desk. As she walked it to the conference room, she passed the new security notice on the bulletin board. Report all suspicious contacts from foreign nationals immediately. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed the file on the conference table. Director Zander looked up from his conversation with two senior officers. Thank you, Zara. We'd be lost without you. Walking back to her desk, she made her decision. June 7, 1962 Reed, if that was his real name, met her in Rock Creek Park. They sat on a bench overlooking the water. Joggers and cyclists passed occasionally, but none close enough to overhear their conversation. I'm glad you called, he said. You've made the right choice. I haven't made any choice yet, Zara replied. I want to understand exactly what you're asking for. As I said, nothing that violates your conscience. General assessments, mood within the building, upcoming travel by key personnel. Information that helps us understand how your government thinks. And in return, $50,000. Immediately, another $50,000 in 6 months. Your mother will have the best care money can buy. Zara stared at the creek, watching the water flow over rocks. Who are you really, Mr. Reed? He smiled thinly. Let's say I represent the other side of the same coin. We're not so different, your employers and mine, both fighting for what we believe is right. The KGB, she said quietly. He neither confirmed nor denied it. We would communicate through simple, safe methods. A chalk mark on the mailbox at the corner of 18th and S Streets would signal a meeting. You would never need to carry documents or do anything suspicious. Zara thought about her mother, about her country, about the oath she'd taken when joining the CIA, even as a secretary. I need time to think, she said. Reed nodded. Of course, but not too much time. The offer expires in 3 days. He stood to leave. Oh, and Zara? We already know about your meeting with security yesterday. Her blood ran cold. After their first meeting, she had indeed reported a suspicious contact to CIA counterintelligence, though she'd been vague about details, frightened of losing her job for even speaking with him. They're watching you now, Reed continued casually. If you go back to them, there will be consequences. Not for you, for your mother. He walked away, leaving Zara trembling on the bench, trapped between impossible choices. June 8, 1962, Miss Mitchell. The director would like to see you. Zara looked up from her typewriter to see Frank Harris from security standing at her door. His expression was professionally neutral, but something in his posture suggested urgency. Now? She asked, heart hammering in her chest. Yes, ma'am. She followed him to the elevator, then up to the executive floor. Not to Director Zander's office, but to a conference room she'd never entered before. Inside, 3 men waited, none of whom she recognized. Miss Mitchell, please have a seat, said the oldest of the 3, a stern-looking man in his 50s with a crew cut. I'm Colonel James Warren, Counterintelligence Division. The atmosphere in the room was heavy with unspoken accusation. Am I in some kind of trouble? She asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. That depends, said the second man, younger and sharp-featured. We understand you've been contacted by a foreign agent. Tell us about that. Zara took a deep breath. A man approached me about 3 weeks ago. He claimed to be researching administrative systems, but then made it clear he wanted information about the agency. And you reported this yesterday. The third man emphasized the timeline with obvious skepticism. I was frightened, she admitted. He knew about my mother's illness, my financial situation. I didn't know what to do. Did you accept any money from this individual? Colonel Warren asked bluntly. Zara hesitated, then nodded. He left an envelope, $2,000. I haven't spent it. The three men exchanged glances. Miss Mitchell, we believe you've been targeted by the KGB for recruitment, said Colonel Warren. This is a serious national security matter. I haven't given him any information, she insisted, and I reported the contact. Eventually, the sharp-featured man said coldly. Colonel Warren leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to continue meeting with this man, under our supervision. You'll become a double agent, feeding him information we provide. What? The word escaped her lips before she could stop it. It's either that or we investigate you for espionage. Given the delayed reporting and acceptance of funds, that wouldn't look good for you. This is an opportunity, Miss Mitchell, the third man said, his tone softening slightly. A chance to serve your country in an extraordinary way. And my mother? She asked quietly. The agency will ensure she receives the care she needs, Colonel Warren assured her. We take care of our own. Zara looked at each man in turn, understanding that her life had just changed irrevocably. What do I need to do? June 10, 1962, the phone booth at Union Station felt claustrophobic as Zara dialed the number Reed had given her. Her hands were clammy, her mouth dry. In her ear, the tiny receiver the CIA had provided recorded every word. Yes, Reed answered on the third ring. It's Zara Mitchell. I've made my decision. Pause. I'm listening. I'll do it. The words felt like betrayal in her mouth, even knowing they were part of the CIA's plan. But I need guarantees about the money and my mother's safety. Of course, Reed sounded pleased. Let's meet tomorrow to discuss details. The bench in Rock Creek Park, noon. No, Zara said firmly, following her instructions. Too public. There's a storage room in the basement of my apartment building. Private entrance from the alley. 8 o'clock tomorrow night. A longer pause. Very well. 8 o'clock. Zara hung up and exited the phone booth. Outside, she nodded almost imperceptibly to the plainclothes CIA officer pretending to read a newspaper by the station entrance. The trap was set. June 11, 1962, 7:45 p.m., the basement storage room had been transformed into a surveillance post. Microphones hidden in light fixtures, cameras behind air vents, and 3 armed CIA officers in the adjacent maintenance room. Remember, Colonel Warren said as he adjusted Zara's wire, get him to explicitly state what information he wants and who he represents. Once we have that on tape, we move in. What if he's suspicious? He won't be. KGB recruiters are confident, especially with targets they consider vulnerable. He paused, looking at her with what might have been respect. You're doing your country a great service, Miss Mitchell. At precisely 8 o'clock, footsteps echoed in the alley outside. A knock at the door. Zara opened it to find Reed standing there, briefcase in hand. A rather unorthodox location, he said, stepping inside and glancing around the dimly lit room with its concrete walls and single table and 2 chairs. I needed privacy, Zara explained. This is a big decision for me. Reed sat at the table, placing his briefcase before him. Indeed it is. Shall we discuss terms? Zara sat opposite him, trying to calm her racing heart. Before anything else, I need to know exactly who I'm working for. Reed smiled. I think you've already deduced that. I want to hear you say it. He studied her for a moment. I represent the Committee for State Security of the Soviet Union. The KGB, as your people call it. Zara nodded, knowing the microphones had captured his admission. And what exactly do you want from me? To start, weekly reports on the movement of personnel in and out of the Soviet Eastern Europe Division. Names of stations receiving priority attention. Travel schedules of senior officers. He opened his briefcase. In return, your first payment. He removed a thick envelope and placed it on the table. "How do I know I can trust you?" she asked, following the script. "How do I know this won't just lead to more demands? Miss Mitchell, this is the beginning of a long and mutually beneficial relationship. We value our assets and protect them." He pushed the envelope toward her. "Count it if you wish. $50,000 as promised." The door to the maintenance room burst open. 3 CIA officers rushed in, weapons drawn. "Federal agents. Don't move." Reed's expression registered shock, then fury. In one fluid motion, he flipped the table toward the agents, reached into his jacket and lunged toward Zara. A deafening crack of gunfire filled the small room. Reed crumpled to the floor, blood spreading across his chest. His hand still clutched a small pistol. "Secure the area," shouted Colonel Warren, rushing in behind his men. "Get Miss Mitchell out of here." Zara couldn't move, staring in horror at the dying man on the floor. Reed's eyes found hers, filled not with pain but with a cold certainty. "You're already dead," he whispered in Russian. "They never forget." June 18, 1962, the man you knew as Thomas Reed was actually Mikhail Leonov, a KGB officer operating under diplomatic cover at the Soviet embassy. Director Zander explained. They sat in a secure room deep within CIA headquarters. He was responsible for recruiting at least 3 other government employees over the past 2 years. Zara nodded numbly. She'd barely slept since the shooting, Reed's, Leonov's, final words haunting her dreams. "What happens now?" she asked. "That's what we need to discuss." Director Zander looked uncomfortable. "The Soviets know you were instrumental in exposing their operation. Your position here is compromised." "You're firing me?" Disbelief colored her voice. "No, Zara. We're protecting you." He slid a folder across the table. "This contains your new identity, new background, employment history, even a college degree from Northwestern." "I don't understand." "You're being relocated. New city, new name, new life. The agency will continue to pay your salary, and your mother will receive the best medical care at a private facility in Arizona, under a different name, of course." "I'm being erased," she whispered. "You're being saved," he corrected gently. "The KGB doesn't forget betrayal, real or perceived. If you stay in Washington, you'll be in constant danger." Zara stared at the folder containing her future. "Do I have a choice?" "There's always a choice, but I strongly advise you to accept our protection." That evening, Zara Mitchell packed a single suitcase with essential belongings. She left her apartment keys on the counter along with a resignation letter for her landlord. By morning, she would be on a military transport to a CIA facility in Wyoming for 3 months of transition training before beginning her new life as Catherine Anderson, research librarian in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She would never see Washington again. She would never use her real name again. The last piece of Zara Mitchell disappeared on June 19, 1962. November 12, 1989, Catherine Anderson watched from her living room as television news showed crowds of Germans atop the Berlin Wall, hammering away at the concrete barrier that had divided the city for decades. "The world is changing before our eyes," the news anchor announced. "After 28 years, the Berlin Wall is coming down. Many are calling this the beginning of the end of the Cold War." At 55, Catherine had built a quiet life in Minneapolis. Her hair had grayed, lines had formed around her eyes, but she still carried herself with the precision and attention to detail that had once made her an exemplary CIA secretary. The telephone rang. "Hello?" she answered, eyes still on the television. "Miss Mitchell." The voice was unfamiliar, male, with the faintest trace of an accent. Her blood ran cold. No one had called her that in 27 years. "I think you have the wrong number," she said automatically. "I don't think so," the voice continued. "The KGB has a long memory, longer than the wall that's coming down." She remained silent, hand tightening on the receiver. "But things are changing," the voice continued. "Old enemies becoming, if not friends, then perhaps not enemies either." "What do you want?" she finally asked. "Nothing. Consider this a courtesy call. Your file has been closed. The debt is considered paid. What debt? 27 years of exile. A life taken from you. It seems sufficient punishment, even by our standards. Before she could respond, the line went dead. Catherine sat motionless, staring at the scenes of celebration in Berlin. Tears formed in her eyes, not of fear, but of a complex emotion she couldn't name. Relief, grief, the realization that she had spent half her life looking over her shoulder for a threat that might never have materialized. She thought of her mother, who had passed away 15 years ago in the Arizona facility, never knowing her daughter's true story. She thought of Director Zander, now long retired or perhaps dead. She thought of Mikhail Leonov, bleeding out on a basement floor in Arlington. As Germans danced atop the crumbling wall on her television screen, Catherine Anderson, once Zara Mitchell, understood that one era was ending while another began. For her, too, perhaps it was time to stop running. She picked up the phone and dialed a number she'd memorized but never used, an emergency contact at the CIA, to be used only in dire circumstances. "This is operator 437, answered a professional female voice. "Authentication phrase, please." Catherine took a deep breath. "The cherry blossoms bloom in April." A pause. "Identity confirmed. How may we assist you, Nightingale?" "I'd like to come in from the cold," she said, watching the Berlin Wall fall piece by piece. "I think it's finally time to come home."